Good morning and welcome to Midweek Money Matters. We are thrilled to have you for today's session on budgeting for investing. As we have done over the last few weeks, we're going to be just talking about these four different topics. We're going to talk about what budgeting for investing looks like. We'll talk about how we can change our mindset because that's a big part of making our priorities come to fruition. We'll also talk about ways that maybe we can cut costs. And then we'll go over, as usual, where we can go to learn more. So often I hear from consumers that they feel like budgeting is a bad word. But the reality is, it really doesn't have to be. When we create a budget or a spending plan, it's a way for us to be able to plan our money and how we're going to spend it every month. This is going to help us to make those decisions before we get into that emotional place where money often takes us. If we have it planned out, it helps us to stick to priorities, which is a really big help when it comes to, trying to decide whether or not I want this cup of coffee today, or do I want to be able to plan for my retirement? And the great thing is there are ways that we can figure out to be able to do both and still live a healthy lifestyle. So as we move forward, I hope that we're able to see that throughout this presentation. So I want to talk first about what the difference is between a regular traditional budget and one that kind of helps us to focus on that investing part of what we're doing. A regular budget kind of helps us to focus on how we're going to spend that money across all the categories, and it really tends to look more at our spending habits. And our goals may include depositing into savings and saving for short and long-term plans. The mindset changes a little bit when we start to talk about budgeting for investing because we may be focusing on trying to spend less in some categories, and our goals for saving money in other categories may be to help us be able to put more towards our 401k or our other retirement accounts. So that's really the kind of differences that it's all a matter of where we're going to place our emphasis. And that is something that I think is really important when our goals are to try to be able to set aside more money so that we can start that investing process. But the first thing we have to do is we have to create the spending log. And a spending log is where we record every penny that we spend for at least 30 days. We're going to assign it to a category, whether it is our housing expense, utilities, car payment, insurance, food, entertainment. There are many different categories. And while we don't provide a spending log in today's presentation, if you go online and search for budget or spending plan, there are oodles of them that you can download. And if you're having difficulty finding one, I'm happy to provide that for you. Just send me an email. So once we've recorded that spending log for 30 days, we want to look and break the log down by the category for the money that we've spent. And then we have to do the math. And once we do the math, for some of us, that's kind of a rude awakening for the reality of how we're spending money. And that's something that we really need to be prepared to accept. And if our goals are to change our spending habits so that we're able to invest, we might have to rethink how we're spending money. So maybe we find that we have spending leaks. A few years ago, when I was first working on my budgeting presentations, I did the spending log. And one of the funniest, I don't know if it was funny, but one of the most eye-opening things for me was how much I was spending at convenience stores. I realized that while I was on the road every single time I went into a convenience store, I was buying a bottle of water, a snack, and probably a soda. Um, so that bottle of water for $1.50 added up significantly. And what I found was instead of buying that bottle of soda or bottle of water, I could buy a case of water and I would save significant amounts of money because I could get a case of water for something like $4 as opposed to $1.50 a piece. Now, I also created my own little snack bags. Not only did it save me money, but it saved me calories. I still continued to get my soda because I really like fountain sodas. And I was saving money here, so I felt okay to spend money on that fountain soda. So that kind of covers, are there less costly ways to get the same things that we buy now? What I was really surprised is how I was spending that money. We don't necessarily stop to think about that $5 here or there. So as you're starting to think about ways that you're spending your money, do you think my thought process is, can this exercise help you to change the attitude that we have about spending? Because we can start to think about the fact that these little bits add up as opposed to, it's only a couple of bucks, right? So once we've done our spending log, we have to fill out the spending plan. Um, so I would encourage you to download one that you're comfortable with or create your own. I remember as a kid, my dad had this ledger and he always recorded every single month's worth of expenses. And I never really understood why he did that until I became an adult. And so we fill in that spending plan or that budget, and we complete it based on our log. But we also want to take a look to see if there are ways that we can make adjustments here and there, so that we can free up some of that money, so that we can start to plan for our investments. We spent the last 3 weeks talking about stocks, bonds, um, mutual funds, exchange traded funds, so many different things. And we learned how we can shop for them. We learned how we can open some of those accounts. But now we need to make that a priority in our spending plan. And that's where sort of the rubber hits the road, if you will. So once we've started that spending plan, let's talk about how we can change the way we think. Maybe it's time to forget some of those old spending habits. Maybe it's time to forget stopping at the convenience store to get your drinks. And if we make small changes on a regular basis, it doesn't have to feel like we're giving everything up. Now, one thing that I think is really cool is to create a vision board. A vision board is you take a piece of paper or a poster board or even a document on your computer, and you add to it words and pictures and things that can help you realize where you want to go. So maybe you're wanting to invest so that you can buy a house in 20 years and maybe pay cash for it. Believe it or not, there are people that do that. Maybe you are in your 40s and you haven't started to plan for your retirement. You can create a vision board that can help you focus on that, so that you're able to retire in 20 or 25 years. Another thing that we can do is we can read books about money. If you go to our website, dobs.pa.gov, we actually have a list of books that we encourage consumers to read. And I would encourage you to take the time to find that on our website. And what's really cool, when you find that, you'll also see many of the other publications that we have that are available on things like how to invest. A lot of the documents that I've mentioned throughout the last 4 weeks are found on our website. We have information on identity theft and reverse mortgages and everything in between. So as you're looking for that list of books that we encourage consumers to read, I would suggest that you look at some of those other publications. So let's think about how much we may be able to save. Maybe we need to change our point of view to something that's more minimalistic. Maybe rather than going and buying a new wardrobe every season, I can buy one or two new pieces that will complement what I already have. Or maybe we want to start to love money, love the way we're able to not spend as much. I think that's a really cool way to think about, how we can sort of change that mindset. And again, envision what that comfortable lifestyle will look like for you. Maybe that's another vision board that you can create. Um, and again, those vision boards, if we keep them close by where we can see them, can really help us to remember what our long-term goals are. So inevitably, when we're talking about trying to save money so that we can invest more of it, we have to have the conversation about cutting monthly expenses. And many of us have this reaction, oh no, I can't do that. But what about carpooling to work? Now, many of us are working from home, so that doesn't necessarily apply. But what about refinancing existing debt, particularly a mortgage debt? Mortgages are at an all-time low. And if you have mortgage debt and you can refinance it to a much lower payment, there are calculators that will help you understand what that break-even point is when you start to talk about the fees and costs associated with refinancing compared to how long it will take you to recover that. Or what about consolidating debt? Now, I don't encourage consumers to consolidate debt into a secured loan on a mortgage. However, consolidating debt on a signature loan can save an incredible amount of interest over the life of paying that off. So that's something that is always worth considering. Another thing that we can do, and my husband cringes when I say this, but what about selling some of the things that you no longer use or need? Um, I was cleaning up my basement not long ago, and I was convinced that it's time for me to have a yard sale because I simply have too much stuff that is just collecting dust down there. Another thing that we can do, and many of us don't do this because we don't realize that we can, but we can request a rate reduction on our credit cards and our utilities. Um, Last year, I was taking a look at my internet, my Wi-Fi, and what I realized was that I was paying an awful lot of money and the service wasn't that great. So I started to shop around. Well, unfortunately, I live in a pretty rural community, so there aren't a lot of options. But what I did is I called my service provider and I told them that I was looking to make some changes to my plan. And they actually were able to offer me higher speeds at a lower price. And it was guaranteed as that price is guaranteed as long as I maintain service. So that's a really fantastic way for me to have saved. I think it was something like $15 a month. $15 a month adds up. So that's something that we can do. And it's actually not difficult to request a rate reduction on credit cards either. If you let your credit card company know that you are looking to maybe transfer money, different things like that, transfer balances, those are all ways that we can encourage our credit card companies to lower our interest rates. So those are all ways that we can cut expenses. We can reduce some of our monthly expenses by investing in energy saving light bulbs. The initial outlay of that can be more. However, being able to see that savings over the life of the bulb is very helpful. Also, turning off or unplugging devices that we're not using. I have actually put everything that I use for work on a power strip. And at the end of the day, I cut the power to my power strip because that makes sure that everything's turned off. And in the morning, when I have to start work and I'm still blurry eyed because I just crawled out of bed, all I have to do is hit the switch. We can also adjust our thermostat, turning it down a couple of degrees in the winter or turning it up a little bit in the warmer months, while we can, wear just a tank top, or we can put on socks and a sweatshirt in the winter, can save us significantly. Somebody that I know recently completely canceled their cable bill because they were spending over $100 a month on cable and they weren't watching TV. So they decided to get Netflix, which, I certainly don't endorse any specific company, but they decided to get a streaming service, and they're saving more than $50 a month that they're able to use towards, having more money to invest so they can plan for their futures. And finally, one of the last things I want to talk about as far as reducing monthly expenses are making meals at home rather than going out to eat. And the reality is right now, we're better off to make meals at home anyway. So enough about my ideas of reducing monthly expenses. I would love to hear your thoughts on ways that you can, what you can do to save money. So I'm just going to post this poll right here. And you can just type in real quick. I gave us about 2 minutes today. Just type in real quick your thoughts on ways that I haven't mentioned that we can possibly save money. Got about another minute and a half. I'll tell you that last night's session came up with some really cool ideas. Terrific. We've got one done. Let's see if we can get another. Got about another minute and 10 seconds. I love hearing other people's ideas because I think it really helps us to start that process of thinking outside the box and things that we can do. Just another minute or so, and we'll go ahead and see what we've thought of and talk about maybe some of the things that we heard last night in our session. Okay, let's see. Let's close. Let's see what we've got here. Okay. Supposed to be sharing. I don't see it. Anybody else see it? Okay. Here we go. Somebody says it's kind of old-fashioned, but use it up, wear it out, and make do or do without. I love that. I think that's such a key point, kind of like we talked about only buying one or two pieces of new clothing. Use it until it's done. Reusing things is a great way to be able to save extra money. And weatherizing the home is another really good option. And sometimes there are free services. I know I have PP&L at home, and PP&L will actually come to my house and do a they'll check my home for weatherization, and then they'll provide me with ideas on things that I can do. So those are great ideas. Another thing, one that came up yesterday, And I thought this was really cool, is a woman said that she doesn't spend $5 bills. And I think that's a really cool way to be able to put that money away, because at the end of the month you can take those $5 bills that you haven't spent and deposit them, and then you can use them for investing. Years ago, I actually went and I decided not to spend $1 bills, and over the course of a year I actually saved enough $1 bills that I was able to pay for a nice long weekend at the beach with my kids, and we had a ball. And I didn't feel the cost of it because I had saved those $1 bills through that time, through that time. I agree, Holly. I think the $5 bill is a really cool idea. And I actually was thinking about taking it on myself. Okay, so let's move on. We just got a few more slides. So in our other presentations, hopefully you were a part of those, we actually learned that some investment accounts can be opened with as little as $200. And actually you can open some accounts with even much less than that. So while I can't tell you where to go to open an investment account, because that would be a conflict of interest, I can tell you that when I was researching for this, I searched in my favorite search engine, opening an investment account with $200. If you have less than that, type in what you have. And it will actually bring up companies that you may be interested in investing with. Now, before you decide just to go with the first one that you see, as I've said throughout these last few weeks, make sure that you investigate them on BrokerCheck and you're comfortable with the information that you find there. And then when you have maybe 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 that you're thinking about, compare apples to apples. What's the minimum amount to open an account? What are the fees they're going to charge you? What kind of deposit can you make on a regular basis so that you are continuing to add to your investment account? Because that's the one that's going to helpfully help us get to reach our long-term goals. So then at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we choose a company that suits our needs and fills those criteria that we've talked about. So again, we can go to BrokerCheck. We want to make sure that the person is registered. We want to make sure that the company is legitimate. And you can see if actions or complaints have been filed. Now, we have this budget that we've been working on, and pardon my dog, you hush, sorry about that. Let's take and add a line item to our spending plan for investing. And then take that amount that we've put into our line item and set it up to automatically transfer from our checking to our investment account. That's what makes things grow. And it takes it from us actively having to do it, instead of thinking, oh, I could spend this $50 or whatever your amount is, $25. I could take this and I could go to a movie. If we have it set automatically to happen, we won't miss it, and it becomes habit. And then as you start to make changes to your spending habits, maybe you're buying cases of water now instead of getting them from, singly. Or maybe you get a pay raise or you change jobs and you're making more money. Adjust that budget and make sure that as you're making more, you're putting more towards your investing. And once you do those things, you can watch those investment accounts grow and grow. And imagine how cool it is to see those investment accounts as they start to, you keep putting money in, and then you continue to see the interest piling in, and you start to see increases in the markets, and you start to see dividends be deposited, and you watch that money grow and grow. Isn't that exciting to see as we start to change our habits and we see the payoff at the end in our bottom line in our investment accounts? That gets to be exciting and encouraging. And so then we start to find ways that we can make other adjustments. So it's sort of this great big win-win for everybody once we do those types of things. As I start to wrap up, again, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that if you're considering investing in a company or someone presents you with an investment opportunity, you can always look it up on some of those other websites that I've provided, the SEC, FINRA's website. You can go to Broker Check. You can also call my office at 800 PA Banks, where we have staff available during regular business hours to answer your questions. The call is free, and everything that we offer is always free. So make sure that you give us a call or reach out to me. So that brings us to the close of today's presentation. If there are any questions, feel free to unmute yourself. We are recording, so make sure that you keep that in mind. But you're welcome to unmute yourself or type your message or thoughts or question into today's chat box. Holly has been kind enough to share some different ideas, and repurposing things is really a great way for us to be able to, keep saving that money and be able to free up some income that we can use to invest.
Hi, Katrina, it's Holly.
Hi, Holly.
Is it okay I unmute?
Absolutely.
Just like one thing I've been using in some of my things is get your Pinterest on. Like the whole decorating
Oh,
idea. I found a lot of creative ideas on Pinterest and YouTube.
oh,
Um,
yeah.
so instead of, buying something fancy around the holidays, I find that just little stuff I have around the house, I can make something festive. So I save a lot of money doing that.
Oh, I bet.
Another thing too is that there are some brokerage firms, and I'm not going to name any names, of course, but sometimes, and I love the idea of, what kind of account I can open with $200. But some brokerage accounts you can open with nothing if you promise to have that automatic deposit into the account from your
Ooh.
account every month. And that could be as like a little as $50 a month. So, I mean, there really are very accessible ways that, people can invest without, having a lot of money.
Oh, that's great. Thank you, Holly, for sharing that.
Yeah.
I'm going to remember that for our future presentations because that's huge.
Yeah, it's just, and especially with retirement accounts, with IRAs, banks and brokerage firms are more flexible on the minimum amount that you
The
have
minimum
to.
opening deposit.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. So you just have to ask, though. I mean, that's the thing, just ask.
Oh, sure. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. We are going to be in January, where we're going to be refocusing on investing again, and we're definitely going to be talking about different types of accounts that are available. So I would encourage you both to check out our calendar on our dobs.pa.gov website, and also our Eventbrite page is going to be having those. I'm hoping to get the lineup done in the next couple of weeks so that we can